Previously on Gears.
Let's talk a little bit of Formula One. It is we spoke to him a couple of times during 2012, but now we are chatting to him for the first time 2013. Of course, the man very much instrumental. Daisy, did you speak to Mark when he was here before?
No.
All right. So Marc Priestley, ex-McLaren top mechanic, and of course now a man who just roams around the world, tells everybody how things actually work, and has been very instrumental in putting together some great reports in terms of Formula One testing over the last 2 or 3 weeks. Marc Priestley, great to have you back on Gears, my friend.
Hey Sasha, I'm all good, thank you over here. We've
Okay.
got sunshine for the first time in the last couple of months, so we're all happy over here.
Good man, I'm glad to hear that. Mark, sorry, I had a bit of a technical issue there a couple of seconds ago, but you know that's because I'm not as adept and as don't have the aptitude of yourself. Mark, great to speak to you. You looked very cold in some of the pictures that I saw in Barcelona last week.
Yeah, it was really, really cold. I have to say, I mean, it's been one of the perhaps most unrepresentative set of pre-season tests that we've had for many years, I can remember. And bar the last 2 days in Barcelona, as you say, it was really cold. We had a lot of rain. In Jerez, the circuit wasn't representative of the tracks that we're going to go to. The surface of the track has deteriorated over the course of the last 12 months. And all of that has meant that the teams have been, it's been the same for everybody, but everybody's been slightly hampered in their preparations before we head to Australia at the end of this week.
Yeah, it is quite amazing because, you know, there's so many people or scribes that during the course of these winter tests come out with elaborate analysis of what they predict is going to happen, and then there are others who sit and say, well, we've learned nothing from it. But there has to be an element of knowledge that the teams do gain from these tests. Jerez aside, because we all know that there are problems with the track, but in Barcelona it's a little bit more difficult to figure out as maybe years gone by, maybe because of regulations.
Yeah, I think the one thing that everybody's learnt over these tests, like I say, particularly the Barcelona tests, is that everybody's very, very close. And I think that's what we expected because the rules have stayed very stable between 2012 and 2013. Mm-hmm. And that's meant that the way the cars finished at the 2012 season, the quicker cars were there as a sort of benchmark for the teams further down the grid to be able to sort of, well, copy, if you like. You know, they could take a lot of those ideas, knowing that the bigger teams don't have an awful lot of scope to go much further with their cars, and that's meant that everybody's ended up with some very similar concepts. You know, and I think it's going to mean that on track, in terms of lap time, we're going to see the cars very, very tight. Particularly in the first couple of races, Australia and Malaysia.
Yeah, I'm glad you bring that up because it's always the start of the season always can throw in a couple of some surprises, as opposed to always just sitting and thinking of the top boys, Ferrari, McLaren, Red Bull, perhaps even Lotus. But there were some of the teams that seem to, just in the way that they've evolved their designs. And I look at one of the teams, Mark, Sauber. That car looks very, very good this year.
It is, and Sauber have really impressed me, and I've actually got really high hopes for them, not just because yes, they've taken some sort of fairly bold steps with their car, which is sort of unusual for a midfield team. You know, you often find the midfield teams are reacting to what the top teams do. What we often see with Sauber, and we're certainly seeing at the moment, is that Sauber are taking steps. You know, they're leading the way with certain designs on their cars, and other teams, you know, notably Red Bull, have copied things from Sauber in the past and have gone on to prove to be very successful with those ideas. And I think we're seeing that again already. You know, Sauber have been quite dramatic in the shape of their side pods this year. Yeah. It may sound like a sort of a minor detail to people at home, but you know, these things are actually quite major in terms of the overall aerodynamic package and how it integrates with the rest of the car. And like I say, Sauber have taken big steps there. I have got high hopes. And the other thing about Sauber this year is Nico Hülkenberg. I think he's going to do very, very well. He's a highly rated driver. If that car turns out to be sort of half decent, I think we could see some good things from him and that team this year.
Yeah, I must echo those sentiments 100%. Before we carry there, I do have a few issues in terms of we've lost HRT already for this season, which is very, very unfortunate. Marussia seems to have a pile of money behind it through the Chilton family, and now got Bianchi. The one team that I'm very worried about, Mark, is Force India.
Yeah, I mean, the stories just don't seem to go away, do they? I mean, we keep hearing, of course, from Vijay Mallya that the Force India team is not necessarily linked and related to his other group of companies that are very publicly now in sort of financial difficulty. But you've got to keep asking yourself, how long can that remain the case? If you look at that Force India car, the only real stickers, the only real advertisements on the side of that car are from Mallya's other companies, Sahara and Kingfisher. And of course, like we've heard, they're in serious trouble. And the point to remember here is yes, how long can they go on? I mean, if we believe what we're told, they do have a sort of separate side of the investment is kept separate for the Formula One team. If that's true, then great. It is great that we want to see this team. They're a midfield team. It was very sad that we lost HRT last year. However, they were new boys. This just doesn't take anything away from the sadness here. But they were new to the arena. They came in with a certain business plan, and unfortunately, that didn't work. Force India are not quite in the same sort of league, if you like, with all due respect to HRT. They're a midfield team. They've been around for a while. They've got two good drivers this year in Paul Di Resta and Adrian Sutil. They've got a good engine, and they've got some experience now that they should be building on. So I desperately hope that the money worries that the people are linking them with the other issues, worldwide issues with Mallya's group. I hope they don't come to anything, and I genuinely hope that the team goes from strength to strength. At the moment, I think they're looking okay, and let's hope that continues.
Yeah, I must say, I really hope so too. Looking more towards the front, your thoughts on Lewis Hamilton and Mercedes after the testing?
Well, listen, from the day one, Lewis Hamilton and the entire Mercedes team have played down their chances. They've been very careful to make sure that they don't raise expectations, and they've sort of gone out of their way to do that. Lewis Hamilton not very long ago said that the team would be happy to be qualifying in the top 10 for a Grand Prix. If you read between the lines, you'd say that that's absolute rubbish. A team of Mercedes' stature and size couldn't possibly be happy with a sort of 10th place on a Saturday afternoon, I don't believe. And then, of course, we got to as the temperature rose in Barcelona for the last 2 days, and the teams brought their sort of, their more final upgrades, if you like, before Australia. We've seen Mercedes take a fairly large step. The headline writers have all of a sudden, put Lewis down as a championship contender. I'm not quite sure that's strictly true, but it's undoubtedly the case that they've taken a big leap forward with either the understanding of their car, or with the temperatures on Saturday and Sunday last week being slightly closer to what we're likely to see in Australia. It still won't be the same, but it's slightly closer for sure. And that Mercedes seems to operate far, far better with its tyres, closer to that intended Pirelli working range, if you like. So in the last 2 days for them, both guys, in fact, Lewis Hamilton and Nico Rosberg, very, very promising indeed.
Yeah, they did. They did look good. Two last ones, Mark. The one I got to say, hats off to youngster Jules Bianchi, getting thrown right in the deep end and then coming out. Maybe a little bit more information in terms of fuel loads, etc., or tyres that they used. But to go out there and be a second quicker than Max Chilton, who'd done 11 days of testing, I think is testament to this kid's potential.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't believe for 1 minute that Marussia are going to take all the fuel out all of a sudden just for Bianchi to set a sort of a headline time, if you like. So there's certainly something genuine about his pace, and I happen to think, when that was announced earlier last week, I think it's one of the best things that could have perhaps happened to the team, because with all due respect to Luis Razia, he was not only a rookie, but perhaps untested and unproven anywhere near Formula One, whereas Bianchi has had days in other Formula One cars. We've all seen him run around in the Force India, and those sort of experiences make a difference. They get you over the initial period of having to learn how the controls work, learn the procedures and the processes. Again, I think I've got high hopes for him. The one person who perhaps won't be quite so keen that he's joined the team is, of course, Max Chilton.
Yeah.
When Max signed his deal, Timo Glock was his teammate. Of course, nobody would have really had any expectations for Max against Timo. And if he'd happened to do something, at a particular race, then that would have made him look great. With Luis Razia, I suspect that Max perhaps would have had the advantage, having had the more days in testing, and perhaps could have outshone him a little bit. With Bianchi next to him in that team, Max has got to work very, very hard to put in a good showing in 2013.
Before I put you on the spot as what's going to happen in Australia, final one on drivers, Mark. I must say I'm a huge fan of Valtteri Bottas. Number one, delighted that he's in the Williams team. I think Williams have got a relatively decent package already. I wouldn't be surprised to see this guy really challenging up front.
I agree, completely agree. We haven't seen an awful lot of Valtteri Bottas. He hasn't raced in 2012, of anything notable. He's done a few Friday sessions, and he's always performed very, very highly in those. But the one key thing that shines for me about Valtteri Bottas is the words from his boss, Frank Williams, when the deal was signed, is that he's noted him down as being one of the most promising talents he has ever seen.
Sure.
And coming from somebody like Frank Williams, that's the sort of highest praise perhaps you can get as a driver.
Sure.
They're not messing about with this guy. They've put him in the car. He doesn't come with the enormous sort of sums of money perhaps that some of these other drivers, notably Bruno Senna, who was with the team last year. So they may have taken a financial hit to some extent to take this punt on put him in the car, but all of those things point to the fact that the people who work with him day in, day out see something very special, and I'm really excited to see him get going in Australia.
Yeah, myself. Mark, final one, Australian Grand Prix. Is it Red Bull up front, maybe with Ferrari, Lotus, or the way that I see it, I'm putting my money on McLaren?
Wow, that's a brave move to go for McLaren, I would say. Not out of the question by any means, because the key point from all of this winter testing we should really mention is that because temperatures have been so low, we haven't really seen what these Pirellis will do, and you can't underestimate the difference it makes to a Formula One car when these tyres are sort of switched on, if you like, in their correct operating temperature window. We haven't really seen them do that, even on the last 2 days. In Barcelona, they were getting close to it, but they weren't really at the temperatures they need to be at. And so we could see teams that were struggling, like McLaren a little bit in Barcelona, when they arrive in Melbourne, if the temperatures are right, that car could be a completely different car. So it is a little bit of a lottery. However, in terms of underlying pace, my money is still on Red Bull this year.
Excellent, Mark. It's always a treat to speak to you, my friend. I hope we speak to you quite regularly during the year, and enjoy the season as much as we're going to.
Yeah, no, it's been a pleasure, Sasha, and can't wait to talk again. Looking forward to it.
All right, thank you very much. There we go, Marc Priestley. Volumes of knowledge and information. So great to speak to him. Sure, we will chat to him more during 2013.
Weekdays from 12 to 2 p.m. Central African Time.
Beautiful, beautiful.
Gears with Sasha Martinengo on bulls.co.za.